All right. Hi, Nick. Welcome to the Animal Turn.
Well, thanks for having me.
You've mentioned now that a couple of times that you're interested in captivity, and you said kind of that, yes, there are animals in zoos and in people's homes, but there are other kinds of captive animals. So perhaps we could talk a little bit now about what is this concept of captivity? What does it mean to be captive, and how does it relate to the city?
Great. So the basic and I guess most intuitive definition of captivity, which I don't reject, but I'll get into more fine-grained distinctions later, is a deprivation of freedoms. Right. So being captive is a sort of negative state or condition for those who are born in it. Um, so when you're captive, there's something you're being deprived of, and that's going to be the freedom to do some things or experience some things or follow certain things like your natural instincts or natural behaviors, or live according to your natural behaviors and natural needs. Um, so that's the sort of starting point of a negative definition of captivity. Um, but that's not going to be exactly sufficient to recognize and get a really, I think, meaningful account of captivity, because we also need to know how that takes place, right? How
Mm.
we actually deprive um, animals or other beings, including human beings, of their freedom or freedoms. So, following Laurie Gruen, I get to a relational account of captivity that involves a captive and a captor, or captives and captors. And the captors could be like a collective or it could be an institution. It doesn't really matter for now. Um, So a captive is held captive by a captor, and the captor keeps the captive by doing certain things. And so what they do is they typically confine the captive being, they control the captive being, and oftentimes as a result of those two things, confinement and control, they also make the being dependent. So those three conditions are the three conditions that Laura Gruen lists in her account of captivity. So confinement, control, independence, and they tend to be mutually reinforcing, right? Um, so we'll get there, but in the case of many urban animals, you can see how by making them dependent and or vulnerable, we also, to a degree, already make them confined to certain spaces where they can survive, as opposed to places where they can survive. Um, so those three things tend to be interdependent, but so together they constitute the necessary and jointly sufficient conditions for being a captive. Um, and so when you start thinking about those three conditions, confinement, control, independence, you start realizing that perhaps there are more cases of captivity than you would have suspected.